cinema cameras in 2025 and beyond, I think it's only relevant for those that are really making cinema and working with big crews. And for that, I would say better just rent. But for most of the people that are doing just content creation for, I don't know, documentaries to corporate movies, business, music videos, and so on, I don't see much of the point of cinema cameras. You know, the size, the weight, all the accessories and all the equipment. I think for most people really doesn't make a lot of sense. And the small cameras now, the codecs are becoming better and better. Maybe with Nikon acquisition of Red, for example, camera that I use the most. Maybe they're going to incorporate the same kind of raw license inside of the next generation of Nikon cameras. Maybe, hopefully. Maybe not, hopefully. But even a 422 10-bit is already enough for most productions, particularly because I would say there are many other things that are way more important than the camera. You know, sensor technology now got to a point where return is very small for, you know, such a big investment. Maybe one stop more of dynamic range, if that. So production design is way more important. Light, set design, clothing, the actors, the story, the location. And I personally like either very small crew or really working in a very big project. There are a lot of people, but then you're just part of a team. You have to do just your function pretty much. But I'm all for these more intimate also productions. The team is not so big. You have a bit more freedom. Also, you have somehow more creativity too. And the restriction of working with a small crew when people really love what they do is that, you know, they're very motivated. Is a different feeling than a very big production where you're just part of another 100 people in there. So for the young filmmakers, I would say, you know, focus on the story, focus on production design, and pretty much all the new cameras now to a level, you know, from Blackmagic to Canon to Nikon to Sony, Sigma FP, Cine DNG is great, Blackmagic 12-bit. I mean, yes, I like Red. I think the image of the Red is very nice. The 16-bit RAW, also the workflow of the RAW is great. But when the production is really tight, the production design, and you might even put a camera. I did tests, you'll be surprised, with Sony Venice and a Sony A7R II at 420, but the light was right and the lenses were the same and didn't have to do so much color correction because the production design was already there. And yeah, there is a difference, but it's not as relevant as you may think. Now, what plays a lot is what we see now is this We are kind of oversaturated now with lenses and companies producing like vintage lenses, copy of older lenses, And for decades, I've been collecting. Now I don't collect anymore, but I collected a lot of vintage glass. And I went through everything: Sombertio, Ingenieux, Kearns Vitar, Nikkors, Canon, Leica. List goes on. Pretty much hundreds and hundreds of different lenses, from cine lenses to Super 16 lens to C-mount to M42 to photography glass. And I gotta say that even lens, when the production design is really great, you have very diminishing returns, meaning if you take a size O2s, for example, or you take a massive prime or a super prime or whatever you want, very clean glass, and you might take maybe a 50 millimeters f1.8 Canon lens, or some 50 millimeter glass that costs 100 and 200. Yeah, you will see a difference, obviously, on the vignetting and the contrast and so on. But it's diminishing return. Now, the advantage of using vintage lenses in low-budget productions, when you don't have a lot of control of light and you don't have, a lot of stylization in the production element, then the glass can become a tool to stylize a little bit that footage, to give a feel either from the past or from a certain decade or a certain look, and that kind of helps harmonize the image. But the tighter the production design, you'll see that unless it's really part of the story, you need to stylize, you see less the necessity of using vintage glass too. So it's two things. And believe me, I went through everything. I'm still, my lens today is just a set of Leica R lenses and Zeiss classic Milvus classic and Milvus lenses, and the Leica R lenses. So this is the two sets, but I went through everything. Aspherical lenses, from Noctilux to Samilux, and lots of vintage glass from the 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, coated, uncoated. And it's like an endless game, because each glass will give you a different style, or give a different look. But when the production is really right and you get the color, saturation right with the lighting and everything, yes, plays a role, but it's less and less relevant unless it's really part of the stylization. You'll be surprised that I did film a scene with a C200 and a Canon 50mm f1.8, the kit lens that cost $100. As long as it's not a kit zoom lens, that maybe even be also usable in a certain focal length, but for the most, even a like 50 millimeters is just the sweet spot, is just kind of the right lens, in fact, to use for most things. You can use for everything pretty much. And if you take a 51.8, $100, Nikkor, it doesn't matter, or Leica R, 50mm Summicron, 50mm f2, the lens that I use the most, with the E55 filter, just ND filter. Don't need a matte box, nothing. And boom, you already get an amazing image with that. So you don't need a 30,000. By the time you start putting that 30,000 euro lens, or anything above 5,000, that has to be really related to the whole production. And now we're dealing with operators, camera assistant, and then there is other production involved and producers, and it's all part of this packaging also, production packaging, and has to do with management, has to do with so many other things also, not only the image, So there is also the image of the image, perception of value too. But then we are really moving into the production, in a bigger production environment. But for the young filmmakers, I just gotta say that sensor technology is, I wouldn't say is in the peak, but is really very mature. There's hardly any camera out there now from a certain price point, that from 1,000, for example, 1,500, that you have a Panasonic camera I like a lot is I like the Sigma FP. You got the Cine DNG there, which is a kind of a RAW, 12-bit RAW. Used lots of the Blackmagics, from the original Blackmagic to the 4K, the 6K, to the Ursa. And the Reds use all the Helium, the Scarlett, the Epic Monstro. But the camera that I like a lot, the Sonys are great for the autofocus. Another thing also, if you're in a small production, to have a good autofocus like you have on the Sony and the Canon, probably now on Nikon also, and some other brands, it's quite helpful, so you don't need to pull focus constantly for certain types of shots. So I think for the question is, the title of my video, if it's really relevant. It's not like few years ago where the Cine camera maybe differentiate us a little bit from, certain intermediate production from the bottom. Now most camera technologies are really good. You can do great things with, and you'll be surprised that Super 35, I think, is still the sweet spot, because you can use lots of lenses that give a good coverage also, because you can use the full frames lenses, and then might have a little bit less vignetting too on that glass when it's fully open on a Super 35, and you might even maximize a little bit more sharpness. I don't know. It's really, there is also very interesting is the lens coating and the sensor color kind of plays also an interesting combination. And medium format, which is a bit kind of a trend. I used to shoot a lot with like S006 and 007, which are medium format cameras. And I think, there is a look, but I would say it's not as relevant as a lot of people make now. And you can see from ARRI, apparently the best camera that they have in terms of image and sensor now is the 35, and that's a Super 35. And from Red, the camera I used a lot was the Helium, also, which is kind of a Super 35, a little bit bigger than a Super 35. The crop is 1.3 something, not 1.5. So it's a kind of just a tiny bigger than a APS-C. And has quite a lot of high megapixel also. So it's that camera I like a lot. But there you go, the Reds, then you have to deal with the audio issues. And so now you have camera I enjoy using is the Leica SL2S, because you have a very good viewfinder too on that camera. So that is a great thing. But I think there is a twin sister from Panasonic cameras that maybe even have better autofocus, the S5, I don't know, one of those S5 series of Panasonic that resemble a lot the Leica, maybe their cooperation and everything. So, and I think there are some good codecs in there. that give a very good image. But you'll be surprised. I've done great stuff that cut with raw footage and was in 4:2:0 from a Sony A7R II, and just combining the right glass, and mainly because the light was right, the moment was right, the framing was right. So all I want to say to the young creators out there is just now gear is really mature. This is not to say that we don't need gear or we don't need new cameras, none of that. I'm not claiming any of that, but I'm just saying that you can do pretty much with what you have today. And you don't need a very expensive glass, and you don't need also the newest camera. So in a very tight budget, you can produce amazing cinema, videos, content, cinematic stuff, whatever that means, cinematic, and without having to spend a lot of money on equipment. So my tip is just focus on the writing, on the story, on the actors, the talent, production design, and the camera is important, but it's not. And sound, I would say, is extremely important, and is something I'm gonna cover on another video, because my first profession, I was a sound designer, sound editor, film composer in Hollywood for a decade, and with a lot of experience on television, lots of syndicated shows and episodes. And you can really differentiate also when you have really great sound, particularly special sound, in a sense of that the location sound is very good. It's quite difficult, good location sound. So this is my tip for you guys. Yes, cinema camera may be relevant if you work in cinema and a very big production, and there is quite a lot of money behind, there is a lot of people involved. And do you need to buy a camera like that? I'm not sure. I'm not sure, unless you want to break your back, you want to deal with lots of things, you want to be very slow, and you want to look cool, or you have the necessity to make impression, or you need multiple cameras. There are other reasons maybe, but for most of the people, I don't think so. It's not really relevant. It's diminished returns now on a camera. I would pick a camera that has great autofocus today if I would buy a camera, which I want. But I would pick a camera with a great autofocus, some good codecs in it. And I mean, most of them, the color science is also good. You just do a bit of correction. But if you light well, production design, gaffer, art design, location, and all these other elements are the way, I would say, is even more important. So this is my tip for you guys out there, and have a nice day. Bye. Take care.